Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Autodesk Community Conversations. Very excited for the material that we have to share with you today, but in the meantime, while we're waiting for people to jump on, go ahead in the chat and just let us know where you're dialing in from. There's Thomas, always number one. Hi, Thomas. So I'm coming to you from not so sunny Pennsylvania this morning. We're getting a little bit of rain, but thank goodness it's not snow. Hi, Jacob in Massachusetts, Nirmal in India. Saul, of course, joining us from Boston. I'll be up there in a few weeks, Saul.
Nice.
To see you there. Yeah, we've got Dario again from Italy. I saw you on the last call. David is calling in from the wilds of West County, California. Hello, Brian from Chicago, of course, Sean from Oregon. We'll let everybody another minute or so to log in. Hi, Ashley in Los Angeles, Andre from Tampa. So we've got all over. I was really surprised the architecture session this morning. We had people from all around the world logging in. It was very awesome. Hi, Bassam from Corona, California. And we do have the Slido available. You can start submitting your questions a while for our product team. Go Chiefs. Hi, Nick from Kansas City. You have some skin in that game, huh? All right. All right. Well, I think we're, what's that?
I was going to say, I can show my non-Americanness by not knowing what the Chiefs are.
Ah, yes. The NFL football team that is
I figured
vying for a spot. Yes. So, very good. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So we have our community conversations, and I think my notes are actually messed up here, Sean. I'm getting a little confused, but we're going to welcome everybody to our computational design and automation Dynamo roadmap. Ask me anything. Looking forward to meeting our product managers. My name is Kimberly Fuhrman. I'll be your I am your Revit community manager, but I will be your host and moderator for today's session. So our safe harbor statement, just very quickly, if we make any forward-looking statements today based on our roadmap, I don't want you to make any purchasing decisions based on those statements. If you are making purchasing decisions, please look at the software in its state today and that alone. Okay. Before we begin, you can enable live transcription of audio in 11 languages. In order to use live captions in this meeting, go to your meeting controls, select more options, and turn on live captions. We are using Slido for questions today, so go to slido.com and enter the code DYNA. I want to say Dynamo like it's misspelled, but it's not. It's DYN for Dynamo, AMA, Ask Me Anything, 23. This session will be recorded. The recording will be posted on the Community Conversations page when ready. Translated captions will display at the base of the screen while in your Zoom meeting. So we'll have bidirectional translation available in the following languages: Chinese, simplified, Dutch, English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Ukrainian. Very cool. So hello, everyone. Okay. And today's panelists, I'd like each of them to introduce themselves and let us know what they're most excited about on the roadmap that's coming up. So Lilli, why don't we start with you?
Hi, everyone. Lilli Smith. I'm a product manager on the computational design and automation team. And I am really excited about some of the new stuff that we have around player and generative design in 2023 and about upcoming things that we are working on in 2024 for Revit. Over to you, Sol.
All right, thanks, Lilli. Hello, everyone. My name is Sol. I'm a product manager working in the same group as Lilli, working on Dynamo. So very excited to be here today and talk to you all. I am most excited about the machine learning empowered node autocomplete that we just released. This is going to be sort of cranked up to 10 is when Revit actually comes out. We're working on the back end right now, but excited to see what kind of new paradigms this would actually do to help people build things better and faster and with higher fidelity. Over to you, Jacob.
And I'm Jacob Small. I'm a technical consultant based out of Malden, Massachusetts. Background in architecture, and really excited to actually start to get to play with all these cool tools that have been developed and start to implement some really cool functions for a lot of customers that I work with.
You all have had a pretty successful run with our community conversations in Dynamo. So, thank you for putting your efforts into that as well. I'm sure it's a great time. Okay, we're going to start off. We're going to give this a try, Lilli, see if this works. We're going to do a SlidePoll, so you can join. I think I missed a slide. No, it did go right to it. Where are you joining us from? So go to slido.com. There's the QR code. You can use that, or you can go to slido.com and join us at hashtag DynPoll. Okay, and
if you already told us, you can make up a different place.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. Okay, our results are coming in. Yay, it's working. All right, Boston, yes, Germany. Oh, we have a few more that have jumped on since our initial question. Toronto is definitely getting some love there. Bend, Oregon. Like I said, I'm calling in from South Central Pennsylvania, which is not Philly or Pittsburgh. But hey, I think we're missing David Koch on this call. I'm not seeing Philadelphia anywhere. So I'm not sure we can get started yet, right? All right, a couple more typing. So we'll let those come in. Okay, quite a wide variety. Somebody says it's, yes.
Apologies if you already pointed this out, but you just might want to point out to people that when the Slido link that they're seeing, there's kind of two tabs at the top. One is for these polls that we're doing, and then the other one is for if you want to ask a question, you can put a question in there. So,
yep, absolutely. Thank you. Sure. Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll go to one more question, and then I'm going to hand it, I believe, over to Lilli. Or actually, we have a few more questions, I guess, before our product board. So what version of Revit are you personally using most? Ah, very interesting. I was interested to see how many are not using Revit. Yeah. Maybe using Dynamo with other products. Sure. Okay, it looks like answers have slowed down. So quite a few of you have jumped up to 2023. That's good to know. Very awesome stuff. Very cool. All right. And then the next question, how much experience do you have with Dynamo? I honestly thought at one point that I hit that expert level, but man, I think I'm back at that beginning my Dynamo journey for sure after watching Jacob and Saul and Lilli work their magic. That's pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
I'm with you, Jacob, on the Jacob Small level. I think.
I marked myself down as beginning my Dynamo journey because I had to open Dynamo for Robot yesterday, and that was a little confusing.
All right. Lilli, do we want to jump to another question, or is there a slide for the roadmap?
There's a slide for the roadmap.
Okay. There is another Dynamo question, another Slido question. I didn't know if you wanted to go ahead and do that. All right. So the next question is, do you use Dynamo Player? Okay. And we'll go to the next slide. If you're not sure you use Dynamo Player, that's okay. Okay, we can help you figure that out. Okay. All right, a lot of you are using Dynamo Player. And if you're not sure, it is something that's built into Revit. Okay. All right, answers are slowing down again. So 64% of you say yes, using Dynamo Player. That's fantastic. All right. And another question, how much experience do you have with generative design in Revit? Exploring, intermediate user, or advanced? This is the product team way of getting to know who's on the call today. So we certainly appreciate you taking the time to create these answers for us. Okay, so a lot of you are exploring. Very good. Jacob is that one advanced user, right? 10%.
I think John Pearson probably fits the category too. I think he's on the call.
Right, right. Yeah. All right. So thank you all for taking the time to do those answers for us. We're going to move on because I know we have a lot of questions that are coming in. Our Dynamo roadmap, I'm going to hand this over to Lilli. We've got a brand new format for our product roadmaps that we're very excited to introduce. And so I'm going to actually stop sharing. Lilli's going to show us a little bit about our new public roadmaps. Lilli?
Thanks, Kimberly. Can you all see the roadmap here? So this is the dynamobim.org website, our website where we have our blog, our forum, a lot of learning resources. And we just added this tab for our public roadmap. And so we would love to get your feedback. You can come here and you can click on these things and you can vote on how important it is to you. And you can also, once you do this, you'll get into a place where you can write a comment on what this means to you. You can also submit new ideas here. And we just wanted to run through a couple of the things that we've released. Well, a couple things that we wanted to highlight in each of these tabs. So Sol, do you want to start and talk about a couple of these things?
Sure. So one case in point is this is starting at Dynamo 2.17, which is our latest release, which will be in the next version of Revit. Everything previous you can see in our old roadmap with the link down below. There was a little bit of a gap where we didn't write the verbose version. But what I'm really excited about in 2.17 is a couple of things. I mean, there's lots of good stuff, but logging into Autodesk products inside of Dynamo Core now is actually really impactful. If you've been in Revit, this is not going to impact you that much. But if you're an Alias or robot structural analysis or advanced steel or a bunch of other applications, this gives you the ability to upload packages from them and from Dynamo Sandbox. So no longer do you have to log into Revit to do that. So very excited for that and for the future potential that brings with us connecting to other things like Autodesk Docs, Autodesk Platform Services, and many, many more. Also really excited, like I mentioned in the startup, for the machine learning empowered autocomplete. This is being trained in a more realistic sense than the existing autocomplete is, which just does type matching. So you should be able to get much more efficiency moving forward with this feature.
And then I'll just mention a couple more things quickly, but a lot of people have been excited about the insert graph into graph, which allows you, if you have a Dynamo file open, you can say, oh, I remember this routine I had in another Dynamo file. Now you can insert it without having to do some kind of copy paste gymnastics. So that is one that people really like. We're also looking at using watch nodes to display geometry that might be hidden. And so this can be really useful if you starting to have an alternative way to view things that you might want hidden in the background, but you can still kind of see that they're there. We're also working on, we haven't released anything around it yet, but we have ideas around having these watch 3D nodes show up in Player. So moving on to the In Progress tab. And so this is released in Dynamo 2.17, which you can get from this tab here, Get Dynamo. And we'll work on getting this into Revit and our other host integrations. But this is what's just come out recently. And In Progress, do you want to talk about some things on here, Sol?
Yeah, for sure. So just to highlight a couple of really interesting things that I think are going on is, number one, we're refactoring the Dynamo engine. So for anyone who's been frustrated with performance in the past of Dynamo, we're looking into that very deeply right now. What's also really interesting about this space is it's looking into the possibility of compiling Dynamo graphs into executables, which opens up whole new worlds of also interesting opportunistic things. We're also looking into doing settings deployment. So in Dynamo 2.17, you can import and export settings, which is really cool. And we're looking to actually add those to the deployment for Revit. So if you're a large office and you want to have consistency with all of your users, especially if they're just starting out, you will be able to do this with the deployment mechanism.
And then just a couple more things. We've heard a lot of feedback that people have wanted to be able to set up their list of folders that are used in Player or generative design for other users in their office, so that they can get access to these list of scripts, of routines that they want people to be using. So we have put those into settings. We've also put a lot more Dynamo settings into settings now, and made that file so that it can be deployed in a Revit installation or in a Civil 3D installation. So that should hopefully help people get started with a good environment for more people to be able to run Dynamo scripts. We've also been working on bubbling up warnings and error messages in Player, so that people who want the friendlier environment of running things in Player can tell if there's problems, can copy those, can download them, send them to your BIM manager, who can help you figure out what's going on. So all in an attempt to get more people involved in the ecosystem. And then under consideration, things that we haven't started working on yet, other than we're really thinking about them and really want to do them. But these are things that need more planning. So extra insights from you all would be wonderful. But Sol, you want to talk about some of these?
Yeah, for sure. So one other thing to bear in mind is they have different levels of technical ability for us to do. And so for us to invest in these things, we really do appreciate all the feedback that you do give on them. So you'll notice there's some numbers creeping up, like Dynamo Search Improvements has 11 different feedback points. That helps us a lot to be able to make those justifications and calls to index into and invest in these things. So please do give us all the feedback that you want to see under here. And again, some of those ideas that come through, we'll start finding the ways on here in time. One other thing to bear in mind is this is not an exhaustive list of everything that we are doing. This is just some of the bigger pieces. So in particular on this list, I'm really excited about improving node search. We've been talking about it for a long time. Part of the trickiness with this is improved search means different things to different people. So please do submit your ideas around what matters to you. Is it performance? Is it the ability to type in a particular keyword and have the right result come through? Because that might be different to somebody else's keyword choice. So give us some of that salient feedback. It would be really cool for us to actually invest in this and make it as robust as everybody expects. And I'm also really excited about everything on this list, but in particular, the ability to stop sort of third-party extensions and things that build on top of Dynamo crashing Dynamo. So right now, we have some safety guardrails we need to build into the system to ensure that you don't even have to worry about that kind of stuff. Now, right now, you do, and we want to remove that sort of frustration and knowledge overhead.
So scrolling down a little bit, I just also wanted to highlight, we're working on getting Dynamo files so that they can be stored and accessed and have a more robust experience on the Autodesk docs, because we think there's some utility there in helping again, get more people involved in using these Dynamo files and understanding what they do and being more comfortable with using them. So we think that this is one way to do it. So yeah, the Dynamo Public Roadmap, please come and give us your votes and your feedback or submit ideas. Back to you, Kimberly. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, like that hasn't happened before. Thanks, Lilli. Yeah, so I know Sean put the link in the chat directly to our Slido. I know some of you have found the Q&A that was on the poll link. I'll try to get those questions as well, but for our questions here, at least try and put them into the slido.com with the link that is shown on the screen to our Dynamo 23 link, and we'll be able to look at those questions, vote them up. Again, just a reminder that this is the session is strictly computational design, and we have other Ask Me Anythings that are happening this week. We'll get you the links to those a little bit later, but for here, we want to focus on computational design. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and switch over to Slido to grab some questions. All right. So, from the poll Q&A, will there be a new name for Dynamo Cloud or Dynamo 360?
Yes, short answer, at some point. Right now we're working on Dynamo as a service, the ability to use the engine in the service mode, which we're calling Dynamo as a service, but it's going to have some kind of cooler name than that at some point.
But I would add that there's a lot of opportunities for us to use Dynamo in the cloud. And so it might not be one thing. It might be the ability to store files and use them on your desktop. It might be the ability to run Dynamo authored logic in the cloud. It might be using Dynamo on things that we haven't even thought of yet.
All right, next question. Can you tell us more about Dynamo for Autodesk Platform Services? That one came from our own Scott Davis.
Sure, we could have a stab at this. So currently there's nothing connected yet, but we have big plans in the future to get more and more integrated and give more and more opportunity to Dynamo with the whole Autodesk sort of ecosystem, inclusive of Autodesk Platform Services. So there are some things bubbling away in the background right now, which I don't think we can quite talk about yet, but we'll get there soon, I'm sure. And eventually what we want to do is have the ability for Dynamo to talk to and play nicely with all of the APIs that exist on Forge or Autodesk Platform Services. Sorry, I was just off on paternity leave. I'm still catching up with the lingo change. And so what you can imagine is that, Dynamo is going to be able to start talking to things like Fusion APIs and talking to things like BIM 360 APIs and so on in the not too distant future. And we really want to make the interface between Dynamo and those things cohesive and simple enough for people to start building their own connections and bespoke workflows with. So just in the same way that Dynamo built sort of like a workflow or an interface to zero-touch nodes for the Revit API, where you only really had to know the Revit API. You didn't have to understand how to do things like transactions in the background. We want to do a similar thing for the Autodesk Platform Service APIs.
Okay. All right, I saw John Mrs. Fractal, just so you know. Thomas says, why is it not so easy to implement opening multiple tabs or scripts at once so you can select only a part from another script instead of inserting a whole script?
Can I just jump in there really quickly? Kim? Yeah. It looks like the Slido poll is closed. Thomas had mentioned it in the chat.
I closed the poll that was in the poll.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm trying to direct everybody back to the normal Q&A. That was the confusing part. We have two parts to this. So I want to prevent any more going in there.
Yeah, and I'm trying to close out the poll questions so that we can get over to the actual generative design.
I can answer this.
These are still poll questions, just to let you know. So Saul, go ahead.
So the short answer, in Dynamo today, having multiple tabs just gets very confusing about what Dynamo is pointing to and when. So if you have a Revit document open and you have multiple different views open and you have a Dynamo script that points to one of those and you try to open another one that points to a different place, Dynamo is going to get confused and there's going to be more sort of infinite loop situations happening and things along those lines. So the inserting graph into graph, we put a guardrail up to actually switch it to manual to make sure that you're not going to automatically kick off a crazy graph that does lots and lots of things and sort of consumes your computer resources for an hour or so, so that you can sort of connect those things up correctly and ensure that it's working. This is a feature that's actually intended also for Dynamo dictionary samples, which are going to be able to be dragged from a sidebar panel into Dynamo in the 2.18 version. Unfortunately, it didn't make it quite into 2.17.
Okay. Awesome. Nirmal wants to know, can we see the code behind built-in Dynamo nodes?
I can do this one if you want to, Jacob.
Yes, you can for the most part. I'm actually pasting a link right now into chat to the Dynamo GitHub, where you can actually view the individual code that runs under the hood for each one of the individual nodes. There's a similar link for Dynamo Revit, which I'm trying to grab too, but I can only put so many things in my clipboard at a time. Thank you, Sol, for grabbing that for me. It's like you knew what I was going towards.
Yeah, John did ask the question. One other thing to bear in mind is you will not be able to see the geometrical methods, the code behind those. That is closed source to Autodesk. We use a geometry kernel that is not, unfortunately, open source, so you don't get to see that stuff. But all of the other methods that we use, you should be able to see on both of those resources.
Awesome. And one last question from the poll. Some of the scripts developed in Dynamo version 2.12 won't get opened in Dynamo version 2.5 or 2.6, but some of them will get opened. So for that, I used Dynamo Future file package to use higher version scripts in lower version Dynamo. But may I know the reason? Is this a bug, or would that be the exact issue? Or what would be the exact issue?
So specifically for this one, when Dynamo opens a file, it has to do something called like deserialize that file, in essence, and understand what it has to load, how it has to show a graph, and what kind of settings it has, and all that stuff. We made a bug, in essence. We broke something that caused like everything moving forward was fine, but opening some of those files from a future version and a previous version, essentially Dynamo just didn't load it correctly. Like you would have a completely blank screen. And unless you really knew what was going on, it becomes really difficult to understand, which is also part of the reason why we introduced the notifications panel, to be able to tell you about these kind of things. And the Dynamo Future file is actually one of the notifications on there. And what this change did was ensure that Dynamo could read both sets. If we'd known, we would have obviously made it work across the board, but unfortunately, because it's already out, we had to release this future file to fix it.
All right, John asked, now I'm over to our regular Slido questions, so we should be good to go now here. John says, can we enable the roadmap link when in the forum view? When on this URL, it does not show, and it's the forum.dynamobim.com URL.
Yes, we can. I was going to do that, but ran out of time before this AMA.
All right. Very cool. Jason also asked, Dynamo for actual AutoCAD, not Civil 3D.
We've been in discussions with the AutoCAD team, so we need to have a collaboration essentially between Dynamo and the hosts to make something happen. And as it stands right now, we don't have anything on the roadmap for base AutoCAD, albeit we will keep asking and keep wanting to sort of make that happen on both sides of the fence. We do see value there for sure. We would love to get Dynamo in base AutoCAD.
Okay. Awesome. Jason asks, are there any plans for adding MEP tasks to the computational workflows not necessarily using Dynamo, like air terminal or equipment placement, similar to the furniture layout? And then a moderator asked for additional clarification, and Jason replied later, I guess I would mean if that computational generative design tasks that are currently built in do not use Dynamo?
So I can speak to this a little bit. Some of those tools, they're kind of Revit specific tools. I'm assuming you mean like the populate the tables or populate the furniture within the hex grid tool that's been built into Revit and a few other pieces. It's likely that there's stuff that people are thinking about, but I don't know how what the Revit team's actively working on. So you might want to talk to them in the Revit MEP session going forward. I think that's Thursday or maybe Wednesday. I don't know. It's not today. I can say that much.
Awesome. Ashley asks, I'm not completely familiar with Dynamo Player, so I'm not sure if this is a feature, but is it possible to schedule tasks with Dynamo scripts, either with a Revit model open or outside of Revit?
I guess I'll take this one too. You can't directly schedule Dynamo to do stuff. You can schedule Revit to do stuff through some sort of Windows automations and stuff like that. And one of the things that you can have Revit do is run a Dynamo graph. So not something that's built into Player now. Player's more from a perspective of I've built a tool, I want to use the tool now with a manual user interface rather than sort of an automation standpoint. Lilli can probably speak a bit more to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, can I just add, I mean, yeah, you can't schedule it right now, but Ashley, that's a great question, and we'd love to hear kind of what you would like to schedule more, because we are definitely thinking about those kind of schedule workflows for our cloud workflows, which we see, you know, a lot of people wanting to do things at night on using Revit design automation or other design automation. And so we would love to hear kind of what kinds of things that you would like to do so that we can plan for those kinds of workflows.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I think she clarified in the chat, say perhaps running NWC exports or PDFs, things that Clarity can do, but if one doesn't have Clarity, what to do?
Yeah. I can say you can build tools to do both of those things now, leveraging Dynamo code. But again, you have to build something external to that to trigger start Revit and run this command. Journal automation is one way to start to get there.
Okay. Awesome. Jonathan asks, are there plans to have events start automations for Dynamo graphs in the cloud, like run script on new family added?
Short answer, yeah, for sure. We need to be careful about that though, because every single time you add a family, especially if you're adding 1,000 in a row, that might get complex very quickly. So like part of the design around putting Dynamo in the cloud is understanding these kind of use cases and safeguarding their use in a way that makes sense to people, so they don't have to have all of that knowledge at the front before they even start thinking about doing something. We would love to talk more. So if you have thoughts and ideas about what you want to do, please do submit them to the Dynamo roadmap wishlist item. There is a couple of points there talking to running on the cloud and scheduling things on the cloud there already. So I would love the feedback on that one.
Awesome. Thanks, Saul. Jonathan asks, how would automatic runs in the cloud handle work shared models and locked elements by other users?
It's, I think, Revit design automation is just starting to work with Revit cloud work sharing and the newest iterations of that. So yeah, that is a really good and interesting question. I mean, we've had like ideation sessions around that saying, you know, do we have a special user that's like the night Dynamo automation straightened out all my tags, or, you know, is it attributed to a bot or a person who set it up? Yeah, there's a lot of questions there that will be great to answer, and that's also why we want to hear more about, you know, what are your most valuable workflows, and you know, what should we work on on first.
Awesome. Thomas says, can you implement, please, a Dynamo Revit select model elements node when using linked models? Not sure if this is a Revit problem.
It's not necessarily a Revit problem. In fact, I believe John Pearson has something that's already built in. Oh yes, there it is in the chat. Rhythm has something, and they work with Dynamo Player as well. And I'm assuming generative design too, John. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it's likely that they could be moved to out of. Oh, there we go. Yes, they were made for generative design, and no reason they can't move to out of the box too. So
you guys are twinning today.
Yeah, and you know, Thomas said please, so I think that has to, you know, at least weigh in on something there for sure. All right. Yeah, Thomas says our attendees are not able to read the chat, so I don't know if everything's going to just the host and panelists. Sean says it's solved. All right, thank you. All right, question from John. Any thoughts on a read-only mode for transaction-based nodes in Revit? It could enable people to test things without creating 500 levels or something.
We definitely have ideas on this, and we have plans for implementing it. We just haven't implemented it yet. So it's good to know that you are interested in that. If you're familiar at all with generative design, we do have there a node called a gate node, which has a switch on it that you can open and close anything that happens after that. So you can use that to control a branch of your graph that might be generating Revit elements. And in generative design, that's what the Create Revit Elements button is actually hooked up to. Now, we hear this request for people to be able to run read-only in a more in more use cases, and so we want to be able to open that up more widely, because yeah, we hear you that creating 500 levels would be no bueno.
I once
but should you?
I once received a model from a consultant, no kidding, that had levels for every step in a theater style auditorium. I thought, oh my goodness. So a lot of it is possible, but yeah, no. Not recommended. Stephen asks, our company is hesitant about moving our designs to the cloud-based services provided by Autodesk. There seems to be a push to move toward the cloud-based software. Will Dynamo and other products strictly become a cloud-based service in the future?
I'll take a stab, and then you want to add. Sol, I see you. Yeah. Your wheels.
My brain moving.
So, I mean, our products now are very heavily based in desktop, and I don't think that's going to go away next year. I don't think it's going to go away the year after that. There's a lot of value that people and a lot of power that people have in their desktop machines. We're going to start to try to use the cloud to augment these desktop workflows and provide more valuable functionality that we can, using, being able to share things, being able to do these automations overnight that are based in the cloud. Cloud work sharing is a thing that helps many people. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for these kind of desktop hybrid workflows. Eventually, we may get to a point where there, is a transition that everyone is working in the cloud. I don't know, Sol, you want to talk?
Yeah,
down that road.
I've got some thoughts. So first of all, like every released version of Dynamo today on a desktop-based product is going to be there for as long as you have it or want to have it. So for example, if you have Revit 2020 and you just want to keep using that version and you keep having access to that, the version of Dynamo inside of there is never going to change. It's always going to be there and it's always going to be able to do what you want to do today. So like definitely hear you on the concern. We are, like Lilli said, we're looking to move more to a hybrid approach in the short term, which simply means like doing everything you can today, but also the ability to unlock more potential. And you don't have to use those things if you don't want to. In the longer term, the way the world is going is everything is moving closer towards sort of, software as a service and things being cloud-based. And so we are sort of skating to where the puck is going in that a little bit. We don't have any plans, like Lilli said, in the next couple of years to be fully moving there. But we are mindful that the possibility and the opportunity in that world can be much greater than what you have available today on desktop. That doesn't mean it's necessarily better, it's different. So like sometimes desktop-based computation is going to be faster than say sending something off to a service and returning it, but it does open up new worlds of parallelization or connection for things like Fusion APIs. So in a world that you don't need to actually have those Fusion product installed on your own machine. So you could send geometry and data between different project teams that allows you to work with what you're relevant with, having products that only you care about and sending what is salient to other people and having them work on that, or having some sort of giant epic workflow that connects a bunch of different things together. You could theorize a world where you're connected through software as a service, that you can connect 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different pieces of software via the APIs and have a full-blown workflow that starts your project off, getting site data, pulling in site data, pulling in some basic things just to get you going. So the possibility there is around more automation, more possibility, less manual work, which is what excites us.
Cool. Question from John, they just swapped. Is there potential for Dynamo Analytics on the new home screen?
Depends what you mean by Dynamo Analytics, I guess is the short answer. Like we, as a company, we can't give away things like user count for corporate reasons, but we can start thinking about sort of user analytics. We have talked about doing something like that in the past. It's not right now part of the new home screen experience. The new home screen experience is about starting to build those hybrid connections to, access to things like Autodesk Docs and sharing, like Lilli said. John is talking about social security numbers and stuff. Yeah, we could maybe think about that. I don't know. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you actually want to see, and please do submit those into that app home element on the roadmap for what you think is relevant.
I would also add that Autodesk has some tools Autodesk has like 3 tools called Insights, but there's one that's really interesting around looking at people's use of different products, and in I think actually a totally non-annoying way. You may disagree, but like suggesting what else you can do, learning content, helpful things based on your user patterns. And that is definitely something that we are going to consider for Dynamo as well, especially if it's going to help people to author or use different routines that they might not be aware of. And we have, to answer the question about analytics for that new home screen, we have had a lot of requests for people wanting to say, I need to prove my existence as a design tech manager, making these libraries of scripts and curating them. So I want to know how many people are using them. Now, there's ways to do that in Dynamo, that putting little nodes in your scripts that report on that, but I think we can also provide some more robust ways using those tools to satisfy that as well.
All right, another question from John jumped to the top, but I'm hesitant to ask. This pertains to the roadmap item, Dynamo node graph on Autodesk Docs. Could this potentially enable graphs posted on the forum to be navigable?
Yeah, short answer, yes. We would love to get to that space where the forum doesn't just use screenshots anymore, but has like a cached version of the last run of a graph to get more insights into helping people.
Awesome. All right, Sam asks, is there anything in the map for Dynamo Player as a tab instead of a window? There are multiple add-ins which do this, and many users are more inclined versus the pop-out, which can be intimidating.
That's a good suggestion. We should look at it.
And John says, no more blurry screenshots. A dockable pane would be great. So for further insight. Sam asked for the cloud, is the idea to have package consistency a little easier?
Yeah, very much so. So we see some of the biggest problems, and you guys could all give us feedback around this, but we see some of the biggest problems that exist in Dynamo today is around dependency management and versioning issues. And we really do want to start addressing those kind of concerns when we start thinking about this future potential state inside of the cloud. And what that means is you can start building environments that are no longer interfacing with others in the wrong kind of ways. So right now, if you open up Dynamo and it uses a particular building block, a particular DLL, and then another add-in that you install from another vendor uses the same building block, like base Windows operations means that it'll load one of those things in a particular order that is not necessarily controllable by us. And what that simply means is sometimes things go wrong. So because everything lives inside of the same world, we have less control. So thinking about this future state gives us the ability to control that more. So versioning dependencies, a huge part of the excited reason why we're thinking that this future world could be really cool. You want to sort of take away the burden from you, just make the whole experience more streamlined, much easier, and simply put, hope that you can focus on your workflows as opposed to trying to figure out how to make them work.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, Andre asks, says, this is Dynamo, but not generative computational design specific. Is there any way to auto archive working versions of a Dynamo graph, something to restore to?
So yeah, kind of. So Dynamo has a backup system, and in Dynamo 2.17, we've actually just introduced features inside of the preference panel that allow you to specify how many backups you want and at what intervals you will save them. So that'll get you part of the way there. In terms of, so that's kind of like in some ways backing up rather than auto archiving. You might be able to build an extension if you wish to go down that path to do some kind of auto archiving and restore system, but we don't have that out of the box. So I guess the answer is kind of partial.
I think it's doable.
We do, I mean, if you do store your graphs on docs, there is versions there as well.
All right, Andre asked, or like we just did that one, yep. Thomas says, how fluid is the editing in Dynamo Cloud Service compared to the desktop experience?
So it doesn't exist yet. So the short answer is we don't know. Ideally, it's going to be smoother and better and so much more fluid. So very fluid, as John said in the chat. So right now we have Dynamo on the desktop. It uses an engine on the desktop. It uses your own machine specifications to run stuff. The first thing we're doing is building a Dynamo service that enables you to run those graphs elsewhere. And that's going to start with thinking about connecting to things like design automation APIs for Revit and other products, starting to connect to things like Forge. And what that means is you can run the graph and get a result and send it somewhere, or send the result somewhere. So that's pass one, which will not have any editing experience whatsoever. And further in the future, we'll start to look to editing experiences inside of the cloud. And these kind of questions are going to become very salient there.
Awesome. Okay, Jonathan asks again, are plans for out-of-the-box nodes to export PDF, IFC, DWG from Revit? I want to schedule these in the future.
Lilli, I don't know if you want to take that, otherwise I can.
Go ahead.
So we don't currently have any plans for that. What we do have plans to do is introduce, as part of the roadmap, you might have seen an item around like different file formats inside of Dynamo, which is going to start to get us like one step closer to that world. I know you're talking specifically about Revit APIs right now, which do exist. So we can definitely talk to the team responsible for that to try and get that on the roadmap, especially when we're talking about this sort of schedulable world. Makes perfect sense to be able to do the heavy lifting overnight.
Yeah, and I think I think it would be pretty easy to write up something to sort of do those exports now, if that was something that you were after. Positive there's already stuff out there for those particular pieces in various packages, and leveraging those packages from the larger communities probably a good idea if you've got a quick deadline, or if this would save you a lot of time for other stuff.
Awesome. John wants to know, could we add the Dynamo text package to the potential out-of-the-box stuff?
Yeah, we could add it to the mix. It's just going to be ranked against everything else that we do.
Okay, awesome. Shashank asks, can I expect the Dynamo to have an amazing feature, like if I have been asked to select model elements in Revit, I can switch to any other view other than active view, as Grasshopper allows me to switch to any view other than active view? That would be a great feature and help.
Right, so to paraphrase this, I think what you're saying is right now Dynamo is working on the active document, which is a particular view inside of Revit, and you're looking to be able to work on things outside of that view. Yeah, we'd need to go back and talk to the team working specifically with Revit. Like John said in the chat, this is an API thing that I am personally not very familiar with, so we'd really need to go to the experts on that one.
Yeah, it's a Revit limitation right now. When you go to select something, it's through manual user interface. It requires setting the active view.
Yeah, there's probably ways you can do a workaround in that around sort of filtered element collectors in certain capacities. But
yeah, maybe, but there's a lot to it.
All right, we have just a few minutes left. We still have some questions coming in. So Sam asks, for the generative design move, how are the Dynamo teams and Revit development teams coordinating? Ideas like automation of project setup is native to this group for 10 years now, but Revit automation doesn't seem to be picking up the hints. Should I take that back to the Revit team?
Maybe. I know a lot of the stuff for Revit automation, I've worked with a lot of customers in particular where they're doing stuff on BIM 360 where they just have something where it's, fill out a quick form and your BIM 360 project's going to be set up, your models are going to be populated, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of that stuff's there, but part of the reason why it's not out of the box is every one of those customers, what they need is very different from the last. So to have something that's holistic and works for everybody is really, really tough to do. Even if you look at the stuff that we have standardized for a while now, everybody does stuff different, right? Everything's a roof. When in doubt, build it as a roof, right? So on and so forth. So it's tough to really make stuff that seems like it should be automatic and ready to go, scale up globally across the entire Autodesk customer base.
I will say that we do work closely with the Revit team. We are in the same division, but there's a lot of competing priorities for people's time, and also the kind of, Dynamo is, the numbers of people using Dynamo are increasing all the time, which is great and gives us a lot more kind of bargaining power, but the numbers of Revit users are, always going to be really large. But we do work closely with them, and we do hear things. We do hear we've talked a lot in this session about how people want to schedule things and automate them, which is great to hear. And we can bring that back and say, look, all these people were wanting these things. So yeah, anything else you want to add, Sol? Or
no, I think it's probably covered.
Awesome. John asks, for the roadmap, are we able to see others' comments? And if not, can that be allowed?
Jacob and I were talking about this earlier. Like we were talking. I was saying it would be nice if you could see other people's comments. I would encourage you, John, if you want to start a forum topic about something, to have the discussion there for now. I mean, it's not allowed how these boards are set up. We don't kind of want it to become a echo chamber. There's certain. It's kind of nice when people come into it and they're not influenced by other people when they vote for things, I would say. But we can,
Yeah.
we
Pros and
can
cons.
talk about it. I don't know.
Sure. Stephen has an interesting question. Is it possible to connect Dynamo with Inventor, ideally to control parameters and explore designs using a graph type interface?
It is possible. They did a proof of concept a couple of years ago, but as Lilli mentioned around competing priorities on Revit, it's the same thing with Inventor. And unfortunately, they had higher priorities than interfacing Revit at that point in time. Happy to loop back and spin that conversation back up there.
Awesome. Questions are jumping around now. Ashley says, are there any certification programs offered by Autodesk for Dynamo? I legit haven't Googled this yet, just thought about it and would love some recommendations on preferred trainings, etc.
I don't know of any certifications. It's something I get asked every once in a while, and usually my advice is whatever you might be certified in is going to have to change pretty significantly year to year. Like if you look at how much Dynamo's evolved over the last 4 years, the ways we did stuff 4 years ago changed 3 years ago, and then changed again 2 years ago. It's a little bit more static now as we're getting into more sort of systemic stuff with the changes, but as we move on to the cloud, I think things are going to change again pretty significantly. So maybe hold off. Just keep current and worry less about certification and more about what's the tool doing.
It's a tricky question because like Jacob said, things are changing, but we do realize that you want to be able to prove the value in your work and in your career and understand how to sort of like peg some kind of information or certification against that. It is tricky. Like we've looked into it a few times. I believe there are a handful of third parties doing their own form of certification out there. I think Diroots, based in Portugal, do one. But it will be a maintenance headache as we look to shift things and do shift things in Dynamo quite sort of like meta shifts or big jumps quite often around, say, how the interface looks or the kind of features that are available.
Okay. All right, I'm going to actually cut us off right there. We're almost at time. Don't worry if your questions weren't answered today. We will get answers for you. I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully this works correctly. Okay, you should be seeing Q&A. And Lilli, just to save any confusion, I'm going to skip our Slido questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, we had questions for you all if you didn't have questions for us, but
yeah.
So
let me see. I just skip to the. I should probably just skip to that. If you want to answer these as we're going along, feel free to do so in the chat. Here's an interesting one. What year was Dynamo 1.0 released? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat if you know the answer to that one.
I think some people are answering.
Yeah.
There might be some confusion around the Slido links.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's just ignore Slido. We'll just keep going for now. Man, how many of these did you put in here, Lilli? That's a lot. Let me
yeah, you can get to the slide sorter view and you can go.
Let me do this way.
While you're doing that, so Chris asked, do we have the Inventor Dynamo link roadmap estimated timeframe? There's not a thing on the roadmap because there is no current work underway on that one, Chris. But if you have a wish list for that, please do submit that as an idea and we can push that back to the Inventor team.
Okay. Thank you, Saul. I think we got it here, some additional resources for you. You can check them out and we'll provide all those links for you as well. And definitely, check out the primers and the public roadmap. Brand new, go vote on items that you feel are important to you. Okay. And I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our speakers, our panelists, our attendees. I want to say a special thank you to Sean Hurley and David Smolker, who've been in the background actually helping to run logistics. They've been especially helpful with this session, so I appreciate their efforts behind the scenes. And don't forget to check out the Autodesk community. A lot of ways that you can connect with Autodesk employees as well as colleagues in the industry. Our community conversations have been very popular. Jacob, Saul, and Lilli have done a fantastic job with the community conversations that they presented. So feel free to check those out as well. And we look to connect with you there. Thank you all so much for your time today. I appreciate everyone taking time of your busy schedule to join us today. Have a great week, everyone.
Wow.
Thanks, everyone.